We are going to look at chapter 17 of the novel Goodbye Mr. Chips. We will look at some of the words and meanings, and we will talk about the important themes of this particular chapter. Foggy is cloudy, thickening is condensing, anxious timidity is nervousness, amused is pleased, twinkling is sparkling, sanatorium is a health resort, and blending is combination, shyly is quietly. Treble is a high-pitched sound, echoing is resounding, fog-laden is something fully covered with fog, and tremulous is someone who is shy, and twilight is evening time or dusk. And the important themes of this particular chapter. They are talking about the retired life of Mr. Chips. As he had fallen ill and due to his old age and bad health, he stayed indoors mostly. And then as he was sitting on his desk or on his bed, he was thinking about his old days. Now Mrs. Wickets, she decides to visit her relatives, and Mr. Chips is left alone to look after himself. And then a visitor comes to see Mr. Chips. Perhaps he did not know that he was going to be the last child, last person to see Mr. Chips alive. His name was Linford, and when he was bidding him goodbye, his words, they reminded him of Catherine. Now, as winter season is presented in this chapter, it is also a symbol for his old age. We are going to talk about the summary of the chapter number 17 of the novel Goodbye Mr. Chips. Mr. Chips spent most of his time indoors due to the cold and foggy weather, and as he was ill, usually he sat by the fire and thought about his old days at the school. He remembered his time at Cambridge, that how as a young man he was studying there. And then he thought about his first meeting with Catherine, whom he met at Great Gables. He was also thinking about his life at Brookfield. He also thought of two unknown works of his life that he had never travelled by air, and he had never been to a talk show. Then a boy named Linford, he came to visit Mr. Chips. Unfortunately, that little boy Linford, he proved to be the last visitor to see Mr. Chips alive. He was a small, timid boy wearing Brookfieldian cap. Some boys made him a fool by saying that Mr. Chips wanted to see him. However, when that boy reached Mr. Chips, he welcomed him and entertained him with tea and walnut cake. Chips welcomed him warmly and he talked to him. Chips told him about his first day at Brookfield. He shared his experience with him and told him that he had never been scared. But he was scared on the first day of Brookfield. He was not scared when Germans were bombing the school. Linford, he said, "Goodbye, Mr. Chips," before leaving his house. These words reminded Chips that on the eve of his wedding day, Catherine had used the same phrase mockingly to just make a joke of his seriousness.